what's up everybody? True Boxing here. Thank you for coming back to get hit with the truth. So today we're doing a recap from the Benavidez versus Andrade Showtime pay-per-view card that took place on Saturday, November 25th. Now, before we get into that, if you could smash the like button, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, I really do appreciate any and all support that I can get as I continue to build my channel here. So this fight, we're going to start with the undercard. And again, guys, thank you so much for supporting my page. I'm up to 648 now. I really believe in a month's time, we are going to get over 700 now. I mean, and I was hoping for 600 just about a month ago. And man, you guys just have overwhelmed me. So thank you. Really appreciate it. I'm going to keep pumping the videos out. I probably have before the end of the year and just after the end of the year, I'm probably going to be pumping out over 200 videos because I'm going to be doing my top 10s, and where I give each fighter that made my top 10 in each of the 12 weight classes that I cover, I give them their own video. You know, there's a lot of other videos besides that, the boxing awards, all that. So a lot to get to before the end of the year. And even after the year, but a lot of videos, and again, I appreciate the support. So again, let's get into the undercard here. We start with the Hector Luis Garcia versus Lamont Roach Jr. mandatory title fight for the WBA 130-pound title at super featherweight, and ended up being the chess match that I predicted, and it was a close, hard-fought battle right there. These two guys went at it. It was a good, like I said, it was kind of a chess match. They were boxing more, trying to figure the other person out. I said it wasn't going to be this dazzling slugfest or anything, but it's two pure boxers going at it. And at the end of the day, Lamont Roach Jr. gets out with a somewhat controversial 12-round split decision victory to become the new WBA champion. And I say somewhat controversial because the punch that he landed in the 12th round that sent Roach down, or sent Hector Luis Garcia down, was landed behind the head. It was clearly behind the head. Now, it wasn't an intentional punch, but it was a punch behind the head, but the referee ruled it a knockdown, a clean punch, and that's all she wrote. And I compare that to the Usyk Dubois belt line shot. Referee, made the call in the moment, and you're not going to overturn the call. But the difference here in this one is I really believe if Garcia protests the fight, he might get a rematch. It was a close, hard-fought battle, went the distance, and that one punch did cost him the fight because one judge had it 114-113 for Roach, and that means that the fight would have been scored 114-114, a draw, and it would have been a majority draw if because one judge would have still had it for him and the other judge would have still had it for Garcia, I believe, and that means the fight would have ended in a draw and Garcia retains his title. So very significant here. So if he protests the fight, Garcia, he might be able to get a rematch with Roach. We'll see. We'll discuss that a little bit more as I leave a week, about a week and a half in between these fights before I do the what's next videos on these fighters, to actually see what the immediate reaction is to the boxing world, and different things like that. That's why I wait on the what's next videos. So next week, I'll do the what's next on Lamont Roach and Hector Luis Garcia, and we'll see what happens. But congratulations to Lamont Roach. It's been 4 years since his first title shot against Jamel Herring, where I was there at that fight. He just didn't pull the trigger that night, trying to win a world title. That was his first shot. This one, he did pull the trigger, and it worked out for him. Hector Luis Garcia, tough break. Second consecutive defeat right here. Tough year, but we'll see how he bounces back. And again, what's next videos on both fighters next week. Now we get to the second fight on the card that saw Subriel Matias, the reigning IBF junior welterweight champ, making the first defense of his title in a mandatory effort against undefeated Shohahan Ergashev. And this one, Matias just did it again. I mean, 5 consecutive opponents now have retired in their corner from the beatdown that Matias puts on them. Ergashev in this one, though, was a little bit different than the Ponce fight that happened in February, because Ponce came out and went after Matias, and everybody was like, oh man, look at how good Ponce looks and everything, but he's not a big power puncher. Ergashev was. So when Ergashev starts landing those big shots and timing them and the right hooks, those first couple rounds, especially the first round, it looked like Matias might get into trouble. But I was watching a fight with a bunch of guys, and I told one of the guys who had never seen Matias, I said, this is what this guy does. He takes his time and he reads his opponent and then starts unloading and breaks his opponent down. And that's exactly what he did. He full-on broke down Ergashev. By the third round, Ergashev was trying to do the same stuff, and now Matias was landing those short, hard shots, and he just continued to land and continue to land and just broke down Ergashev, hurt him. And at the end of 6, Ergashev retired in his corner, and Subriel Matias retains his IBF junior welterweight title. So Matias has made a statement to the 140-pound division and to the boxing world on some level. This is a big card to go and shine, and I think he was the second biggest winner of the night, in my opinion, on the whole card. And Matias, big win, and you know, we'll do his what's next video next week and go over what could be happening next for the reigning champion. 20-1, 20 knockouts, and the 1 defeat, he avenged that by knocking the opponent out in the rematch. So Matias, good to go, good performance there. The co-feature, Jamal Charlo, came in way overweight from what he agreed to at 163. I think he weighed 166, 167. Pretty much was a full-on super middleweight heading in, and took on Jose Benavidez Jr. and pretty much just broke down a smaller guy. I mean, I'm not really surprised that he beat Jose Benavidez. The style, or his style and Benavidez's style, the fact that he's a naturally bigger fighter, and you know, he comes in overweight, you know, instead of the agreed upon weight. So, you know, not really surprised here. Impressed with Benavidez for going 10 rounds, because he took some good ass shots in this fight. You know, we knew Charlo was a good, decent fighter before the 2.5 year layoff. So I don't know why some people are making it out like it was a big deal. I wasn't surprised at all that he beat a guy like Benavidez. I thought Benavidez was a perfect opponent for him to come back against. Benavidez is right there to be hit a lot. He comes right at you, and Charlo broke him down and landed the hard shots. So now Charlo, we'll do a what's next video on him next week and see what happens for him moving forward. But now the main event, David Benavidez versus Demetrius Andrade for the WBC interim super middleweight title. And Benavidez, I mean, just looked great. He did. He totally imposed his will, landed great shots, was patient, and, you know, unloaded and just broke down and beat up Demetrius Andrade and stopped him after Andrade retired in his corner after 6 rounds. Couple things I do want to mention. You know, Benavidez, he looked way bigger, and again, they both made weight the night of the fight. So how much these two guys rehydrate, hey, if it's within the rules to rehydrate and there's no weight cap on that, then those are the rules. If Benavidez is making a weight and he's naturally bigger on fight night, great. But my thing, and I'm not saying, you know, it's a bad thing, it just might end up being an unhealthy thing for David going forward. He looked like he was close to 190 to 200 pounds fight night. That's how much bigger he looked than Andrade. Andrade, it was his second fight at super middleweight. He did his thing. He landed some good shots and everything, but it just when a guy is 8-9 years younger than you, it's already going to be a battle of attrition right there. But, you know, Andrade never faced an opponent even close to as good as Benavidez. He never took those steps towards there. Now, Andrade can argue, hey, that's not my fault. I wanted to fight everybody. Well, yes and no. for a while there was a lot of guys that didn't want to fight him because of his style, and he didn't bring in a lot of money. Okay? Maybe you saw some of that in this fight with David, that he does have a tricky style. But also, he passed on certain fights against tough fighters, like Janabek Alan Kanuli, like what's his name? The fighter that lost last year, and we don't even know how good he really is. He lost to John Ryder last year, Zach Parker. You know, he had opportunities against guys that were better, and he passed on those fights. You know, so Andrade, to go from, you know, 0 to 60 like this, and in reality, this is 0 to 90. I was not surprised that Benavidez broke him down and beat him up, given the size, where they're at, and how good they really are. I really wasn't surprised that David pulled this one off, you know, the way he did. But Andrade, you know, tried as best he could, and David was just too much, and he overwhelmed him. So congrats to David Benavidez on retaining his WBC interim title. And now, I said it going in, and I'm very clear. Canelo has to fight David Benavidez next year. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if they do a setup, a hype for the fight, where both of them fight on the same card or within a week or two of each other in May, and then they fight in September for the, you know, for the undisputed title at 168. Or, you know, maybe they fight next. But one thing I want to make clear, guys, because this whole ducking bullshit, you know, that people say on a lot of fighters, and especially Canelo, we didn't have to be here with David. We didn't. David Benavidez won his title, his first world title, back in, I think it was 2018 or 2017 is when he first won the WBC super middleweight title. So about 6 years back, he beat, I think the guy's name was Ronald Gavril. He actually took a knockdown in the first fight, won a close decision, and then in a rematch dominated Gavril over 12 rounds to retain the belt. But the following year in 2018, he tested positive for cocaine and lost his title because of that, got suspended. He came back the following year. The WBC gave him a break and brought him back the following year after his suspension. And on the Spence and Garcia undercard, he stopped Anthony Durrell in 9 rounds to become the WBC champion a second time. That was in 2019 when he won that belt a second time. Then I believe it was 2020 late 2020, he fails to make weight and loses his title on the scales. And that cost him, because Canelo went on to win the vacant belt that he had lost. He defeated Callum Smith for the vacant WBC and the vacant WBA belt, and then went on to defeat Caleb Plant and Billy Joe Saunders and Caleb Plant to unify all 4 belts. So here's the thing. We would have been talking Canelo ducking Benavidez a long time ago, or we would have already seen the fight, because Canelo would have tried to unify all the belts by beating Benavidez already if David didn't fuck up and lose the belt with testing positive for cocaine and losing the belt on the scales. So to act like that didn't happen and then call Canelo a duck now, it's a little annoying, because those aren't all the facts. And if you go back to the root of things, you know, we either could have been calling Canelo a duck a couple years ago, for real, because David would have been at a height of his peaks, you know, and world champion and reigning world champ. And it very much so could have been the equivalent to Spence and Crawford, you know, which now it kind of is now. But what I'm saying is it could have been a couple years back if David didn't mess up. You know, so you really have to put all these things in context and be fair, you know, before you reach out and call Canelo a duck, because I don't view Canelo not fighting him, even if he was the mandatory the last 2 years. I absolutely do not view that as ducking him. Canelo wanted to wait for the fight to be what it is now. He wanted him to go out and beat legitimate fighters. And let's be real, who, before this year, who has David Benavidez beat? He beat Anthony Durrell, was his best victory. Even Ronald Gavril has never went on to do anything since the back-to-back losses to Benavidez, and I thought the guy was going to make something of himself, and he never did. And that's all that Benavidez, and Benavidez can say, some guys haven't wanted to fight me. Okay, that's true, but here's the kicker for Benavidez. That excuse only goes a certain amount of, or a certain way, and the reason being is the PBC had all the fighters at 168, had a bunch of good fighters. So he was in the promotion that could have forced these guys to fight and paid them a shitload more to get in the ring with David, you know, but it didn't happen. Now, again, like with Andrade, I think for David, there are certain truths to some people not wanting to fight him. That's true. But then there's also, well, you were also with the promotion that had most of the big name guys, and before this year, you hadn't really beaten anybody huge to proclaim that you were the man, you know, that absolutely 150% deserved to be in the ring with Canelo Alvarez. And now that he's knocked out Caleb Plant, or will beat Caleb Plant convincingly, dominated him over 12, and that was a guy that Canelo had defeated and knocked out a year and a half earlier. And then to come back against Andrade, a guy that supposedly has been avoided, and lay him out and destroy him, I'm glad that now Benavidez is finally and truly the guy that Canelo has to fight. Because if Canelo doesn't fight him in 2024, I will agree with every fan, Benavidez or not Benavidez, that Canelo is ducking David Benavidez. If he does not fight him in 2024, he has to fight him. Even if he moves up and tries to make the excuse, oh, I'm going after Bivol. No, you have to fight David in 2024. No ifs, ands, or buts. If he vacates the title, he's ducking him. If he fights, you know, anybody else on this PBC contract by that third fight, if it's not David Benavidez next September, Canelo is ducking David Benavidez. Absolutely 150% agree with that. So, I hope it happens, and congratulations to David, you know, and now's the time. Now is the time. We're finally here. It's finally 100% deserved on David's behalf, and Canelo is still at the peak of his power at 168. He's still the man, and this fight needs to happen. So we'll go over that more next week when I do both Benavidez and Andrade's What's Next videos. But that's it. That's what I got. That's the recap from the November 25th Showtime pay-per-view card, the last Showtime pay-per-view that boxing that we're going to see. Very sad to see it go, but it ended on a good note. Benavidez is on the rise, and he's fast, and it was a good undercard. So, hope you enjoyed the video. Again, next week, be prepared for Roach, Lamont Roach Jr., Hector Luis Garcia, Subriel Matias, Jamal Charlo, David Benavidez, and Demetrius Andrade. Be ready for all their What's Next videos, and I'll discuss all those fighters individually. That's it. That's what I got. This is True Boxing. Give me 1 second, guys. You've been hit with the truth.